I want to do some things differently to make sure I can look back and say, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I did that. And because I did, these opportunities are here. This work has been done. This improvement can be seen in my life. And I think that being able to do those things, I'll be able to look back and say, okay, cool. You're on the right track, or you're continuing down the right track. So keep up the good work, keep this up, and you'll probably get to where you're trying to go. What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Highlight Reel. Today is it's just your boy, and we off the dome today. But I've had a lot of things on my mind that I kind of wanted to talk about in this episode as well. So I figured this would be a good episode to do it. First off, I want to start off with something that's happened to me recently. I went out of the country for the first time in my life a few weeks ago. That was really great. It was a very eye-opening experience because of maybe the people I went with, what I did there, and just the fact that I was even out of the country. But to give a little background information, I went out of the country. I went to Jamaica with many of my friends and whatnot for my friend's birthday, who was turning 25. So I figured this would be maybe a good time to talk about turning 25 and just being 25, because there have been a lot of things that have been happening that I think are starting to shape how I think about things, who I am, who I want to be, and different things of that nature. So once again, I want to talk about the fact that I am now 25. I've been 25 since May of 2024, but I think that there have been a lot of things that have happened in my life recently that have shown me just things I want to do better, things I want to change, and things of that nature, but also just other things I've been learning since then that have shown me, okay, I want to do the second half of my 20s a little different, a little better, you could say. And I just want to make some improvements. That way, when I'm 30, I can say, okay, we've made progress. You've made some changes. Here's some areas that we have improved, and here's some things that we can improve upon and build upon. But I do have a lot of thoughts as far as things I might want to stop doing, or things I maybe have already stopped doing, and things that I've been thinking about. So for example, I talk a lot about how I'm a very social person, and I like being in the mix and stuff like that. Those are things that I know are true to me, very true to me. But I also know that I've done plenty of that. And I don't necessarily need to be doing that maybe at the rate of which I've been doing it. So I know that a lot of people don't like hustle culture, don't think that you should work crazy hard for the things that you want. I can understand that, and I feel some people on that. But I've also learned that I can accept certain things for myself, that I do need to make rest important, which I will at some point. But I know that I'm in a season of trying to make sure I'm taking care of things. The first half of this year didn't go quite how I wanted, and I want to make sure that the second half of 2024 does go how I want it to. So I've been working a lot the last few months, and I plan to work a lot for the rest of the year to make sure that I can get to these certain goals to start next year off how I want to. And with that, I think that there's going to be a lot of me not being out as much, maybe me not being as social and things like that. And sometimes it's hard for me, again, because I am very social, but I also think it's become easier because I know my why. I know that I have this thing I want to get to, and I want to make sure that I'm putting in the work to get to it. So I think that's going to make some things easier for me. And also, just since I've turned 25, I do feel like certain things are maybe making more sense, or maybe because of how much time I have spent on this earth, I've seen some things. I'm still young, of course, but I've seen some things, and I've seen how, okay, before you know it, all this time is gone, and then you'll be wishing once again that you worked harder, or that you did certain things a little different to make sure that you could have these things that you want. So again, I want to make sure I'm finishing this year strong, to make sure that I'm getting to these things that I say I want, and I can start to flourish, and things could change, and things could be different. Maybe things, I improve with myself, things improve with the podcast, things improve with my relationships with people, just all these different things. And not to say I have bad relationships with people or anything like that, but just seeing how, as I continue to grow, improve, and change, how these other things also change along in the process. So I'm looking forward to that, but I know that I'm going to have to work a lot. And with me working a lot, sometimes some of those take a back seat. It's like, okay, with me working a lot, won't always be able to see people, won't always be as social, and I'll kind of be MIA. But that's become something that I kind of look forward to in a way. It's like, all right, during this time, I'm focused, I'm locked in. I knew when I took this trip to Jamaica that was probably going to be one of my last times where I'm super social, very much out. Because for those 4 or 5 days, basically there was just a lot going on. I was doing a whole lot of stuff, but I knew that when I came back that I was going to lock in from there. So looking forward to that. Then also, what else is different about me, of course, that I haven't really touched on. So I'm growing my locks back out. And that is a process that I think if you've never done it, you won't completely understand it. But there is, of course, is a growth process literally in your hair. But then there's also a growth process within you as a person. I believe that makes you more patient or maybe impatient. But you have to kind of trust the process. It's one thing that you actually have to live with and trust the process if you don't cheat the process. Some people do, but if you don't, you'll learn a lot about yourself in that process. And I knew that with this being my second set of locks, I knew that I wanted to make sure that I did things a little differently. And I think maybe that's symbolic of how I'm feeling about my life as I'm 25 now. I want to do some things differently to make sure I can look back and say, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I did that. And because I did, these opportunities are here. This work has been done. This improvement can be seen in my life. And I think that being able to do those things, I'll be able to look back and say, okay, cool. You're on the right track, or you're continuing down the right track. So keep up the good work. Keep this up, and you'll probably get to where you're trying to go. So yeah, there's just a lot of things I've been learning about myself, but a lot of things I've also realized that I need to stop, because again, going out and different things like that, I think I'll be maybe more selective, more intentional with it, because there's a lot of things that I've realized because I did this. That's why I can't have the fruits of this labor, because I didn't put this labor in the first place. So I think it's very interesting. And of course, I'm talking about it by myself. I plan to have, an episode at some point where I'm talking in a group amongst people about, being 25, being in their mid 20s, being in their 20s and different things like that. But I know that for me, this has been a very interesting time, because ever since I've turned 25, I know I wanted to start a certain way. Didn't quite start off how I wanted it to, but I realized that from there, of course, you can bounce back, you can be resilient. And I think that this is a great season, a great time in my life for that, to say, okay, a lot of people say when you turn, 21 and you're in your 20s, you were actually just now really learning how to be an adult. So I'm a young adult still learning how to be an adult in a world of people that don't know what they're doing. You get what I mean? So you have to take your time with that. And with me taking my time with that, I'm doing some reflecting and realizing, okay, there are some things that I've done. Maybe I didn't get the certain outcome or results that I wanted. How can I improve that? How can I change that from there? And I've done a lot of messing up. I'm not gonna lie. I've done a lot of messing up from there. And as I've alluded to earlier this season, I will beat myself up about it. And I still probably will. It's natural when you care about doing certain things. But I've also realized that, okay, I am capable of this, but I can still bounce back and learn from this thing and say, okay, I want to change that going forward so I can be proud of the work that I'm doing, or I can be proud of my progress. And I think that's a very important thing, that if you are 25 and you're in that point in your life, I think that's a very important thing for you to be able to do and say, yeah, they had us in the first half, but second half, we're going to do things a lot better. Because sometimes I still realize how young I am. I have a cousin of mine who I've had on the podcast before. I have a cousin of mine that's older than I am. And when I hear some things that go on in his life, I start to realize, wow, things still have I still have so much time for things to get better in these certain areas. And I look forward to that. And I realize just how young I still am. So then anyone that's younger than me, I realize, man, you probably have no idea how young you actually are until you maybe bump your head a little bit and then realize, dang, I got how much time before I'm how old? Okay, so you can bounce back. And I'm very encouraged by that. And I think that this is something that a lot of people, can keep in mind, because we got time. We do, but I like to move with a sense of urgency. And I think in this time, I'm trying to move with a little more urgency toward improving who I am, changing my life, and starting to reap the benefits of that. Because of course, you always, as long as you're alive, you have an opportunity to flip it around. But of course, you would rather, I would think you would prefer to do it sooner rather than later. I'd rather be able to figure out that, all right, I know what I want to do at, 25 compared to 50. And I'm thinking, all right, I don't know what was going on those first 50 years, but let's go on from here and figure this out. I would like to be able to do that right now. So I just am maybe being more proactive of that and trying to claim it as well, and saying that this is what we're going to do from here. I'm going to say this. This is what I'm going to pray on as well. And this is how we're going to move from here to make sure that we achieve this goal, of course. So, yeah, that's really all I got. I don't have too much to say for this episode necessarily. That was really what it was. I just think that it's a very important time for many of us to be reflecting. I think in this season, in the fall season, it's become my favorite season, I think. But in this time, this is when I tend to lock in a certain way. I think a lot of people but when it gets colder and people are starting to, I don't know. This is just a season for me personally where I've always felt like I've started to gain some traction. I've started to build some momentum. And I think it's good that I'd rather have that progress or that attitude now compared to maybe in a few months toward the end of the year. I'm thinking, all right, this is not what I want to do. Or, just having those ideas where it's like, all right, coming up next year, I'm going to have this attitude. I can maybe have some momentum going into it after I had doing some reflection throughout the year, through the middle of the year. And, we're in quarter 3, quarter 4, realizing that, okay, I want to make some changes. And this is what I want to do. This is how we're going to go from here. 25, realizing certain things. What can I change? What can I make different to have the life I want, to have the results I want, and to have the feelings about myself that I want. So I think that these are very important realizations, very important observations as well, to make sure that I'm moving how I said I should, how I said I want to be, and I'm sticking to that. So I think that if you are in your early to mid 20s, even your late 20s, I think that this is a great time for, self-reflection, realizing what things you want to change. Because again, me at 25, I think that since I turned 25, maybe my brain chemistry might be changed a little bit, saying, all right, man, we've done plenty of this. Let's stop. Let's go from here and do this thing and make sure that we are actually serious about what we say. So I think that at whatever point you are, but especially if you're in your mid 20s, I think this is a good point for you to have that mentality, stick to it, and actually do the thing that you say you're trying to do so we can have the lives that we want. So once again, that's really all I have for you on this episode of The Highlight Reel. Hopefully you've been able to take something away from it. I hope that this can help you in a way. Tell me if you relate as well in the comments or wherever you are listening to this or watching this. Tell me how you feel about that. Being 25, being in your early 20s, being in your mid 20s, your late 20s. How do you feel about what I'm saying? Am I making sense? Did you have similar thoughts? I'm just curious because I don't think I'm alone. If I am alone, I'd like to hear about that as well. Like, where am I going wrong? So I'm curious about what the people think. But again, this has been your episode of The Highlight Reel. I hope that you could take something away from it. And that's been your episode. Peace out.